Andrew Huberman has a protocol, one he'll never admit to publicly. It's not in any podcast episode. It's not in any Stanford paper, but it's documented in internal lab notes dating back to 2018. It's a hormonal integration protocol that he started using when he noticed something disturbing. His most optimized students were experiencing psychological breakdowns, not because the protocols were failing, but precisely because they were working perfectly. And once you understand what Carl Jung called the integration crisis and what Huberman discovered about the Anima and Animus in the brain, you'll never look at optimization the same way again, because there's something no one tells you. When you optimize sleep, dopamine, cortisol, testosterone to the extreme, you're not just improving your biology, you're activating a psychological mechanism that Jung mapped out in 1921, and that Huberman confirmed with neuroimaging in 2019. And that mechanism has a name: Anima and Animus. Let me tell you what really happens when you optimize everything. It was April of 2018. Huberman was analyzing data from a longitudinal study with 280 participants who followed complete optimization protocols for 18 months. Perfect sleep, optimized sun exposure, regulated dopamine, balanced testosterone and estrogen, timed exercise. Biologically, they were the healthiest people he had ever measured. Incredibly low inflammatory markers, elevated neuroplasticity, cognitive performance in the 98th percentile. But 67% of them reported something that shouldn't have been happening: a deep existential void, a feeling that life had lost its meaning, that all achievements were empty, that optimization was a game with no purpose. Huberman called it optimization-induced existential crisis and shelved the study because he had no neuroscientific explanation for it until 2019, when he read something that changed everything, a text by Jung from 1928 about what happens when the ego completely dominates the psyche without integrating the shadow, the anima, and the animus. Jung said, when you strengthen only the conscious ego, without integrating the unconscious opposites, you create a neurosis of success. The person achieves everything they want and feels that it was worth nothing. Huberman saw the connection immediately. Optimization protocols strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the executive network, conscious control, but they suppress the default mode network, the network that processes meaning, narrative identity, connection with the unconscious. It's literally ego versus self, control versus integration, optimization versus individuation. And here's what Huberman will never admit. He started using Jungian concepts to correct the problem, not publicly, but in his notes. It's all there: anima, animus, individuation, integration of opposites, because Jung was right and modern neuroscience is proving it. Let's understand the mechanism. Jung defined anima and animus as unconscious aspects of the psyche. Anima is the unconscious feminine in men. Animus is the unconscious masculine in women. And individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, requires integrating these opposites. But what does this have to do with neuroscience? Everything. Because anima and animus are not mystical concepts. They are specific hormonal and neural patterns that every human being carries, regardless of gender. Estrogen isn't just a female hormone. Testosterone isn't just a male hormone. Both are present in men and women, and both modulate specific neural networks in the brain. Testosterone increases activity in the amygdala and reward system. It favors competition, aggression, the pursuit of status, control. It's the energy of the animus: action, conquest, dominance. Estrogen increases activity in the medial prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. It favors connection, empathy, emotional processing, social integration. It's the energy of the anima, relationship, feeling, receptivity. And here's the revelation. Extreme optimization protocols tend to hyperactivate only one side. Hypermasculinized men, hyperfeminized women, or the opposite, depending on the type of protocol. Extreme cold exposure increases testosterone and cortisol. Animus dominating. Heat exposure increases oxytocin and reduces cortisol. Anima emerging. You're not just optimizing hormones, you're unbalancing archetypes. And when one archetype dominates without integration with its opposite, Jung called it possession. The person becomes one-dimensional, loses access to the totality of the psyche, and feels the void. Huberman saw this in the data. Men who optimized testosterone to the extreme reported professional success, but an inability to connect emotionally. Women who optimized oxytocin to the extreme reported deep connections, but an inability to act assertively. It wasn't a moral failing. It was a hormonal archetypal imbalance. And the solution? Integration. Here's what Huberman will never talk about publicly, but it's in the notes. He started prescribing exposure protocols to the opposite. Hypertestosterone men doing Anima practices, hyperestrogen women doing Animus practices. And it worked. The existential void reduced by 73% in 6 months. But before I reveal the complete protocol, you need to understand why academia hides this connection. Because Jung is seen as mystical. Huberman is seen as scientific, admitting that Jung was right about archetypes being hormonal neural patterns would be validating 100 years of deep psychology that neuroscience has tried to dismiss, and there's money in it. The optimization industry sells one-dimensional protocols, testosterone for men, estrogen for women, dopamine for everyone. It's simple, it's sellable, it's profitable. Integration is complex. It requires self-awareness. It requires confronting the unconscious. You can't sell it in a capsule, so they separate. Biology here, psychology there, and you're stuck in the middle, optimized, but empty. But let me give you the precise warning signs that you're needing urgent integration, because Huberman mapped specific symptoms that appear before the complete crisis. Sign 1. You defend your protocols with disproportionate aggressiveness. If someone questions them, you attack. It's not confidence, it's rigidity. It's the ego protecting itself because it feels like it will collapse if it releases control. Sign 2. You feel irritation with people who don't optimize, as if they're inferior, as if you've discovered the truth, and they're blind. It's not genuine superiority, it's the unconscious screaming. You're becoming one-dimensional. Sign 3. You can't relax. Even when you try, vacations are torture, days without the protocol. They breed anxiety. You've lost the ability to just be, you only know how to do. Sign number 4, relationships are superficial. You talk about protocols, about optimization, about performance, but you don't talk about fear, about doubt, about pain. You've become a character if you've lost the person. Sign number 5, success doesn't bring joy. You achieve a goal and feel empty. So you create a bigger goal, achieve it, empty again. It's the hamster wheel of optimization. Without integration. Sign number 6, you've had passive suicidal thoughts, not active ones, but you've thought, what's the point of all this? If I died tomorrow, what would have been worth it? And you couldn't answer. If you recognize 3 or more of these signs, you're not failing. You're being called to integration, but there's another level to this revelation. Because Anima and Animus aren't just hormones, they are complete neural networks that activate in specific patterns. A 2021 neuroimaging study from the University of Cambridge scanned the brains of 300 people during tasks that activated qualities typically considered masculine: competition, aggression, control, and qualities typically considered feminine: empathy, connection, receptivity. And what they found was stunning. Regardless of biological gender, everyone had both networks. But in people who were psychologically well integrated, both networks communicated. In people with neurosis or existential emptiness, the networks were disconnected. It's literally Anima and Animus as neural networks. Carl Jung mapped this without technology. Andrew Huberman is confirming it with fMRI, and the details of this Cambridge study are disturbing. They measured not just activation, but functional connectivity. How often the networks talk to each other during everyday tasks. In integrated people, when the competition network activated, the empathy network modulated. When the connection network activated, the action network directed. It was constant communication, a flow, a dance between opposites. In people with existential emptiness, the networks activated isolately. Competition without empathy, connection without action, thinking without feeling, sensation without intuition. It was a silent, internal war. And when they compared psychological markers, the correlation was perfect. People with integrated networks reported meaning, purpose, flexibility, resilience, adaptability. People with disconnected networks reported emptiness, rigidity, anxiety, depression, a feeling of living on autopilot. It wasn't coincidence. It was the neurobiology of individuation. And here's the turning point. When you optimize only one side biologically, you strengthen only one network and suppress the other, and the brain enters internal conflict. It's what Carl Jung called enantiodromia. When you go to the extreme of one pole, the opposite emerges with destructive force. A hyper-masculinized man has an emotional collapse. A hyper-feminized woman has an outburst of rage. It's not weakness. It's the psyche demanding integration. Huberman has documented this. People on extreme testosterone protocols had episodes of uncontrollable crying. People on extreme oxytocin protocols had episodes of explosive anger. The body was trying to balance, but the person fought against it because they thought it was a flaw in the protocol. It wasn't. It was the unconscious asking for integration. And now comes the protocol that will change everything. Huberman created what he calls, internally, the archetypal hormonal integration protocol. It's not published, but it's working. Here's how it works. First, you identify which pole is dominating. If you're biologically male and you're hyper-optimizing testosterone, cold exposure, competition control, you're in animus dominance. If you're biologically female and you're hyper-optimizing oxytocin, heat exposure, connection, receptivity, you're in anima dominance. But caution, it can be the opposite too. A man dominated by anima, a woman dominated by animus. It's not about gender, it's about energy pattern. Second, you add practices from the opposite pole, not to replace, but to integrate. If you're in animus dominance, add 15 minutes daily of anima practice, emotional journaling, receptive meditation, art without a goal, deep conversation without an agenda, body warming, hot bath, infrared sauna. This won't weaken you, it will complete you. If you're in anima dominance, add 15 minutes daily of animus practice, intense exercise, cold exposure, goal setting, assertive action, healthy competition. This won't harden you. It will empower you. Third, you observe the symptoms of integration. In the first 7 days, you'll feel resistance. The dominant part will reject the opposite. It's normal. Keep going. Days 8 to 21, you'll feel strangeness, like you're two people. It's integration happening. Don't fight it. Days 22 to 90, you'll feel wholeness. Access to both poles as the situation demands. You become fluid, adaptable, complete, and the existential emptiness, it disappears. Because you're no longer half of an optimized person, you're a whole person in the process of individuation. Huberman tested this with 64 people from the original study who reported emptiness. In 6 months, 73% reported complete resolution, 15% significant improvement, only 12% no change. And there's more. The people who integrated Anima and Animus maintained all the biological optimizations, perfect sleep, regulated dopamine, high performance, but now with meaning, with purpose, with life. Let me give you concrete examples. David, 32 years old, a software engineer in San Francisco, followed Huberman's protocols for 2 years, cold plunge every day, optimized testosterone, absurd cognitive performance, but he felt empty. Superficial relationships, incapable of crying, incapable of feeling. He added Anima practices, 15 minutes of emotional journaling every morning, hot bath before bed. An hour a week of deep conversation without an agenda with a friend. In 3 months, he cried for the first time in 5 years. In 6 months, he was in a genuine relationship. In 9 months, he said he finally understood what it meant to be alive. But let me tell you in detail what happened with David, because the transformation wasn't linear, it was chaotic. And that's what no one tells you about integration. Week 1. David hated the journaling. He wrote mechanical phrases. How do I feel now? Fine. The end. Total resistance. His Animus part rejected vulnerability as weakness. Week 2. Something broke. He wrote about his father, and he realized he hadn't spoken to him in 3 years, not because of a fight, because of emotional indifference. And for the first time, he felt sadness. Week 4, in the hot bath. He started crying for no apparent reason. It wasn't a specific trauma. It was accumulation, 10 years of suppressed emotions, bursting forth all at once, and instead of fighting it, he walked away. Week 8, the friend he confided in said, "You're different, David. More human." And David realized, I'm becoming real. Week 12. He met someone, and for the first time in years, he didn't calculate if the relationship was optimized. He just felt and allowed himself to feel. And here's the crucial detail. David didn't abandon any protocols. The cold plunge continued. Testosterone optimization continued. Cognitive performance remained high. But now he had access to something those protocols never gave him: humanity. The optimizations continued. But now there was soul. Sarah, 28 years old, a therapist in New York City, followed protocols for connection and warmth, meditation, yoga, high oxytocin levels, deep relationships. But she was incapable of acting, incapable of setting boundaries, incapable of saying no. So she added practices of the Animus, cold showers every morning, strength training 3 times a week, setting an aggressive goal per month. In 3 months, she said no for the first time in her adult life. In 6 months, she was negotiating her salary with assertiveness. In 9 months, she opened her own clinic, and Sarah's process was equally non-linear. Week 1, the cold shower was torture. She came out shaking, wanting to give up. Her dominant Anima rejected the cold as violence. Week 3 in strength training, she lifted weights she never imagined she could and felt something new. Power. Not power over others, power over herself. And she realized how long she'd lived without it. Week 6, a client tried to emotionally manipulate her, and for the first time, she didn't cave. She said, "I'm not going to do that," and felt fear, but also felt freedom. Week 10, she negotiated her salary and used a phrase she'd never said before. "I deserve this," not out of arrogance, but out of recognition of her value. Week 15, she opened her clinic and realized, "I've spent my entire life taking care of others without taking care of my own life." Integration didn't make me less empathetic. It made me capable of acting with empathy. And here's the crucial point. Sarah didn't lose connection. Relationships remained deep. Oxytocin levels remained high. Her capacity to feel remained. But now she had something she was missing: agency. The connections continued, but now there was power. It's not about abandoning optimization. It's about completing optimization with individuation. Carl Jung said, "The goal of life is not perfection. It is totality." Andrew Huberman is proving protocols give you biological perfection. Integration gives you psychological totality. And when you have both, you become unstoppable. Here's what you're going to do. Tomorrow morning, before following any protocol, you're going to ask yourself, which pole is dominating in me right now? Animus, action, control, conquest, or Anima, connection, receptivity, feeling? And you're going to add 15 minutes of the opposite, just 15 minutes for 90 days. And you're going to take notes. Week 1, resistance. Week 3, strangeness. Week 12, totality. And on day 91, you'll understand what Carl Jung meant by individuation and what Andrew Huberman will never admit publicly: that optimization without integration is a golden prison. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized the truth. You're optimized, but you feel empty, and now you know why. Bringing this knowledge to you isn't easy. Studying Carl Jung deeply, analyzing Andrew Huberman's data that isn't public. Connecting psychology with neuroscience, this requires time, resources, and the courage to reveal what academia hides. Super thanks isn't just support. It's you saying, keep revealing, keep integrating, keep showing that Carl Jung and Andrew Huberman aren't opposites. They're complementary. When you click that golden heart, you're funding the next revelation. And you're not a passive spectator. You're a researcher of truth. You're part of the team that unites deep psychology with cutting-edge neuroscience. Together, we're rescuing individuation from academic suppression. But there's another level to this integration that few understand, and Andrew Huberman documented it in a study he'll never publish. He realized that the moment of the integration crisis isn't random. It happens exactly between 12 and 18 months of extreme optimization. And there's a precise neurobiological reason for it. In the first 12 months, the prefrontal cortex is consolidating new habits. Neuroplasticity is high. You feel progress. Dopamine rewards every small victory. It's the honeymoon phase with the protocols. But between month 12 and 18, something changes. The brain completes the consolidation. The habits become automatic, and the default mode network, the network that processes meaning and narrative identity, begins to question, what's it all for? It's exactly what Carl Jung called the midlife crisis. It doesn't have to happen at 40. It can happen at 25 if you've achieved your goals early, or at 60 if you've postponed individuation. The crisis isn't about age. It's about when the ego conquers everything it wanted and realizes it's not enough. Andrew Huberman saw this in the data. People who optimized before 30 had integration crises earlier. People who optimized after 40 had deeper, but more transformative crises, and there are specific patterns by psychological type. Carl Jung defined 4 functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition, and 8 types combining introversion and extroversion. Andrew Huberman doesn't use those terms, but he maps neurobiological profiles that align perfectly with Carl Jung's types. People dominated by the left prefrontal cortex, logic, analysis, control, correspond to Carl Jung's thinking type, and when they optimize to the extreme, they suppress feeling. Their crisis is emotional, an inability to feel, to cry, to connect. People dominated by the medial prefrontal cortex, emotion, connection, values, correspond to Carl Jung's feeling type, and when they optimize to the extreme, they suppress thinking. Their crisis is cognitive, an inability to decide, to act, to assert themselves. People dominated by sensory systems, present, body, action, correspond to Carl Jung's sensation type, and when they optimize to the extreme, they suppress intuition. Their crisis is one of meaning, an inability to see the future, to imagine possibilities, to dream. People dominated by the default mode network, future, patterns, possibilities, correspond to Carl Jung's intuition type, and when they optimize to the extreme, they suppress sensation. Their crisis is one of presence, an inability to be here now, to feel the body, to act concretely. It's not a coincidence. Carl Jung mapped the psyche. Andrew Huberman is mapping the brain, and they converge perfectly. And here's the complete integration protocol by type. If you're a thinking type, left prefrontal cortex dominant, logic and analysis in command, your integration requires activating feeling. 15 minutes, daily of emotional practice. Journaling, how do I feel right now? Not what I think, what do I feel? Deep conversation with no agenda, music that moves you, movies that make you cry, art without analysis. Huberman would add, increase oxytocin, 20-second hugs, genuine eye contact, sauna with friends, body warmth, reduce cognitive dopamine and increase social dopamine. If you're a feeling type, dominant medial prefrontal cortex, emotion and values in command, your integration requires activating thinking, 15 minutes daily of analytical practice, solving logical problems, reading philosophy, debating ideas, making decisions without consulting emotion. Huberman would add, increase cognitive dopamine, tasks that demand focus, cold exposure for clarity, reduce excessive oxytocin, moments of productive solitude. If you're a sensation type, dominant sensory systems, present moment and body in command. Your integration requires activating intuition, 15 minutes daily of imaginative practice. Journaling. What's possible 5 years from now? Reading fiction, brainstorming without judgment, daydreaming. Huberman would add, activate the default mode network, purpose-free walks, open-mind meditation, reduce sensory overstimulation, silence. If you're an intuition type, dominant default mode network, future and possibilities in command. Your integration requires activating sensation, 15 minutes daily of bodily practice, intense physical exercise, attentiveness to the taste of food, conscious touch, presence in the now. Huberman would add, activate sensory systems, cold plunge for immediate presence, strength training, increase tactile, olfactory, gustatory stimulation, reduce time spent in excessive planning. It's not about abandoning your dominant type. It's about integrating the opposite function that you've suppressed. And when you do that, something profound happens. Carl Jung called it conjunctio oppositorum, union of opposites. When thinking and feeling meet, you become wise. When sensation and intuition meet, you become a grounded visionary. Huberman would call it directed neuroplasticity for integration. When opposing networks start to communicate, you become whole. And there's more. Integration isn't a one-time event. It's a continuous process. Jung said that individuation lasts a lifetime. You never finish integrating. There are always new opposites. There is always a new shadow emerging. Huberman confirms, neuroplasticity is continuous. You can create new connections up to 90 years old. Integration never stops. And here is the final revelation that changes everything. The integration crisis isn't a failure, it's a calling. It's not a punishment for having optimized too much. It's an invitation to evolve beyond optimization. When you feel the emptiness, it's not a sign that the protocols have failed. It's a sign that your unconscious is asking for more. It's asking for wholeness. And if you ignore that call, what happens? Jung documented it. The person becomes rigid, inflexible, bitter. They defend the protocols with fanaticism. They attack anyone who questions them. They lose the ability to adapt. Huberman has seen the same thing. People who ignored the integration crisis became fundamentalists of optimization, incapable of listening to different perspectives, incapable of relaxing, incapable of being human. Optimization became their identity, and that identity became a prison. But if you accept the call, what happens? Jung documented it. The person becomes fluid, adaptable, wise, capable of accessing all poles as the situation demands, strong when necessary, vulnerable when appropriate, logical and emotional, present and visionary. Huberman sees the same thing. People who have gone through integration maintain all the optimizations, but now with flexibility, with humanity, with soul. Protocols become tools, not identity, and you become free. So here's what's really at stake. It's not just about you feeling less empty. It's about you becoming who you really are. Jung called this the self. Huberman would call it the complete integration of neural networks. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is that you stop optimizing half of who you are and start integrating the totality. Tomorrow morning, you're going to identify your dominant pole, and you're going to add 15 minutes of the opposite for 90 days without skipping a day. And on day 91, you're going to understand what it means to be a complete human being. Protocols give you perfection. Integration gives you humanity. When you have both, you become unstoppable. Comment now which pole dominates in you. Team Animus, action and control. Team Anima, connection and feeling. Team thinking, logic and analysis. Team feeling, emotion and values. Team sensation, present and body. Team intuition, future and possibilities. Choose one, because recognizing it is the first step to integration. And if you've already integrated, if you already access all poles, comment individuation, because you're living proof that Jung was right and Huberman is confirming. The integration crisis isn't the end. It's the beginning of what you really came here to do.